An account in the ancient book of 2 Kings describes a time when the city of Samaria is in a state of famine. It had been under siege by the Aramean army for many days, and the people within the walls were starving. 4 leprous men are sitting at the city gates. They are outcasts with no hope. As they sit there, they begin to discuss their options. If they demand to be let into the city, they will die because those inside are dying and have become so hungry that some of them have begun to eat their own children. They also realize that if they remain where they are, they will die there as well. They have no food either, and their fate is the same as those within the city. The only possible hope lies with the surrounding Aramean army. This is their only hope, their only option. The army has food, but they also have come to the city to destroy it. They choose their only hopeful option and rise up and go out to the camp of their enemy. The ancient record records that it is twilight as they begin their journey. It's that time of day, just before sunrise, when it's hard to see, and they must move by faith, not by sight, to make their way to their goal. Walking into the twilight brings with it certain unknowns. First of all, these 4 desperate men couldn't be sure what awaited them once they reached the camp of the Arameans. They might be taken alive, but they also might be killed. It was a risky process, but they realized it was a risk worth taking. Second of all, they had to make their journey at twilight. At this time of day, things appear a bit uncertain, even hazy. They weren't seen as clearly as they might in the bright daylight. These 4 men had stepped into another dimension, so to speak, a dimension where they had to walk by faith and not merely by sight. You can almost imagine what might be running through their minds. What awaits us at the end of our journey? Will we make it to our goal? Will we find food? Or will we be taken hostage and die? It was a journey of faith. It's what I call a Twilight Trek. This trek ended on a good note. When the 4 leprous men reached their destination, they made a startling discovery. The Arameans were gone. God had caused the army to hear what appeared to be a great army that was about to attack them. In fear, they had fled, leaving vast amounts of treasure and food behind. To their surprise, the lepers now found themselves with more than they could have ever imagined. They had plenty of food, but now they were also rich. They ate their fill and quickly hid some of the treasure they had discovered. But it wasn't long before they realized that they must let those back in the starving city know what they had discovered. They returned to the city that had made them outcasts with good news. There are great lessons here for us. If you stick with me, we'll discover how we can take our own Twilight Trek. Jesus made it clear that his followers would be hated by the world. The early apostles found themselves being cast out by the authorities of their day. Like the lepers, they were outside the city. They soon learned that when someone fully embraces Christ, there are elements of their life that make them reprehensible to man's evil system. This holds true in the world today. In a way, we're like those lepers, people to be rejected and shut out. But one quickly realizes that those who don't know Christ are shut up within a certain mindset, which makes them reject God's followers. They are spiritually starving, and like those in the ancient city of Samaria, they've begun to consume one another. The writer of the book of Hebrews tells us to go outside the gate, that we're looking for another city. But sometimes as Christians, like the 4 leprous men, we find ourselves just outside the city, hanging around the gate. We've become content to sit rather than stepping out in faith. In some ways, we're still like those back in the city. Our faith has become dead. But we don't need to stay that way. Here's the challenge. Isn't it time to rise up and take a Twilight Trek? I mean, move out in faith and see what God might have for us out there in the realm of the supernatural. What do I mean when I say it's time to take a Twilight Trek? If you're someone who's grown discontent with your current level of faith and believes that God has something more, you're a perfect candidate for such a journey. You see, it will take courage to step out of that zone and into the unknown and see God do something marvelous, like he did for those 4 leprous men in ancient Samaria. The early apostles followed Jesus' command and stepped out into the unknown and began to perform the task that he'd given them. They saw the sick healed, demons cast out, and many people marveling that God would show such wonders in their day. Our current entertainment media is promoting wonder workers, people with supernatural gifts. Have you ever wondered why this is all so fascinating to people? It's because people inherently seem to know that these elements should be part of life. But let's go beyond the comic book heroes and see something truly marvelous. Let's see God's wonders that will glorify Christ today. But it will take a trek of faith to arrive there. Isn't it time to take a Twilight Trek? God intervened for the 4 leprous men who left the gate of the city to take a walk in that twilight zone. But it was for more than them that the miracle occurred. There was a city of starving people that needed not only to be fed, but also reminded that their God was a God of the supernatural. Elisha the prophet had predicted just such a miracle would occur. He prophesied abundance, but it was met with mockery. So God chose the most unlikely ones to push the envelope and see his wonders. You see, I believe that there's a generation that God is raising up that will see his wonders in their day. In some way, they may find themselves outcasts, but if they're willing to take a trek into the unknown, God will meet them and they will see great things for his glory. I hope you'll watch my vlogs, read the articles on this site. I've written and produced them to encourage your faith and challenge you to not only discover God's abundant blessings, but also to bring his grace and love to those who are starving for his reality.